My name is Arthur Bell, and I'm 78 years old. I've carried a weight on my chest for 4 decades, and tonight, I'm finally letting it out. They say time heals all wounds. That's a lie. Some wounds rot inside you until you have no choice but to cut them out yourself. 40 years ago, I lost everything to a man I once called my best friend. And last week, I made sure he paid for it. I was 38 when it happened. Back then, I lived in a small market town in Yorkshire, England. The kind where everyone knows everyone, and gossip spreads faster than the wind. I ran a little family-owned pub that my father had left me. Business was steady, enough to keep food on the table and a little saved for the future. I was married to Claire, the kind of woman who could light up a room without saying a word. And then there was Henry, my best mate since we were schoolboys. Henry and I grew up kicking footballs on muddy fields, getting into trouble behind the bike sheds, sharing pints in the very pub I later owned. When my father died, Henry was the first to roll up his sleeves and help me run the place. He said he'd always be there for me, like a brother. But brothers don't do what he did. Not unless they've got no soul. It started small, missing 20 pounds from the till here and there. I trusted Henry with the accounts, because numbers were never my strong point. He'd laugh and say, "Arthur, you've just miscounted again, mate." Then I started hearing whispers about him and Claire. I brushed them off. This was Henry, my best mate, my brother in everything but blood. I didn't realize the knife was already in my back. I just hadn't felt the twist yet. What would you do if your best friend betrayed you like this? One rainy Tuesday, I came home early from the pub. The house was too quiet, except for muffled laughter coming from upstairs. I climbed the stairs, heart pounding, and there they were, Claire in her dressing gown, Henry sitting on the edge of our bed. Neither of them spoke at first. Claire just stared at the floor, while Henry smiled. That smile told me everything. The weeks that followed were a blur. Claire left me for him, and somehow the pub was no longer mine. Turns out, the paperwork Henry had me sign months earlier transferred ownership to his name. When I went to the police, they said there was nothing they could do. I'd signed willingly. I was left with nothing but a small rented flat above a fish and chip shop and the bitter taste of betrayal. Henry and Claire moved into my home, ran my pub, and lived my life. I thought about ending it all. But some stubborn part of me, maybe pride, maybe rage, refused to give them that satisfaction. Instead, I left town. I worked odd jobs, warehouse shifts, farm work, even cleaning train stations. I told myself I'd forget, but the anger never left. It became my shadow, following me into every sleepless night. Years rolled by. I never remarried. Claire stayed with Henry, and together they built a reputation as pillars of the community. He became a local counselor. She ran charity events. They smiled for photographs, shook hands at fundraisers, and nobody knew the truth. But I knew, and I promised myself, if I ever got the chance, I'd take everything from him, just as he'd taken everything from me. That chance came last year. I returned to town after decades away, just an old man now, invisible to most. Henry didn't recognize me at first, my hair white, my back stooped. I went into his pub one quiet afternoon and bought a pint, just to hear his voice. When he rang me up, his hands shook ever so slightly. Somewhere deep down, I think he knew his past had finally caught up. I spent months watching, listening. He had a mistress, much younger, who didn't know about Claire, and he was siphoning council funds into a private account in the Cayman Islands. I gathered everything, bank records, photos, even recorded calls. The man who'd stolen. My life was still a snake, and I was ready to crush him, One damp October evening, I mailed everything to a journalist in London, anonymously. 3 weeks later, headlines screamed, "Local councillor in corruption and fraud scandal. Police raided his home, froze his accounts." Claire's charity was implicated, her name dragged through the mud. Their perfect little empire collapsed overnight. The last time I saw Henry was in the high street. He looked older, thinner, like the weight of the world had finally broken his back. He spotted me. And in that moment, I saw the recognition and the fear. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, the way he had the day he stole everything from. M. Henry now lives alone, in a small, damp flat above a laundrette. Claire left him for some businessman in Manchester. Sometimes I walk past and hear him coughing through the open window. I never speak. I never wave. I just keep walking, my steps a little lighter. 40 years. And it was worth every single day of the wait. If you made it this far, comment, "He took his power back." Subscribe for daily stories that hit hard. And turn on the bell. You don't want to miss what happens next.